Alright, I'm going for the Mega Keg. Alright. Bombs away. Alright, I'm here. I'm climbing up. Anyone home? Hello? Boom! Yeah, that was probably the most useless use of a Mega Keg ever. They were gonna sink no matter what. But the explosion was fun. Oh, there he is. I didn't see him when I was on there. He must have just spawned back in. Oh, he's still trying to bucket. Bop! Hey, what is up everyone? In today's video we have another Sea of Thieves Origins comic to talk about. This is the second comic book that we've done, so make sure to check out the first one if you haven't already. If you're new to this, what we basically do is we just read through the comic book, kind of take it as like an audio book. You can just listen along. I hope this is an enjoyable experience. I hope you enjoy the story. I actually really like the first one. I'm excited to see the second one. Based off this cover image, I think it's going to be something to deal with like the Merchant Alliance. The first one is dealt with the Gold Hoarders. This one looks like we got a merchant on the front. So I'm wondering if maybe each of these origin comics will deal with a different trading company. I'm not exactly sure how it's working. I hope we see more with Humphrey from the last issue though. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the story. The Shores of Plenty. You do realize that this is hardly a convenient time to discuss such matters. Yes, Senior Trader, but it didn't seem, I suppose not, there never is a convenient time anymore. I do appreciate you bringing this to me yourself. So many pirates consider themselves too busy to attend transactions in person. Do you know that I once worked with a particularly infamous captain for years, and the first time I met him was attending his funeral? Did you write this proposal? Yes, Senior Trader. Please, do call me Molly. Do you know I much preferred to do business with the women that find themselves on the Sea of Thieves? Not that there's anything wrong with the men. The ones back home were often simply tools forged for a singular purpose. Do you understand what I mean by that? Men in the wider world mostly become pirates because they are the best at one thing: fighting, robbing, and so on. They desire a challenge. As a result, I find they're often single-minded, boring, if I'm being frank. But women, what manner of women shun house and home? What manner of woman gives up the protection of father and husband to cast themselves into a world of danger and uncertainty? The answer, as you well know, is complex. Women, interesting women. Women of mental prowess and tenacity, my sort of women, the type who thrive on the Sea of Thieves. This is an interesting proposition, though. I would wish to rewrite the thing in its entirety before it saw a letter of my name signed upon it. As it is, it was clearly written by pirates. That's not meant as an insult, simply as a way of differentiating one who engages in organized business from a freelancer, shall we say. It occurs to me that perhaps you are not entirely familiar with the person to whom you are speaking, so I wish to tell you a story. Don't fret, as I will make it quick. I simply believe we should understand one another fully. Despite my current status, in my youth out in the wider world, I was not a person of means. My parents were not well off. But I secured an apprenticeship at the Grand Maritime Union by being a fast talker who refused to take no for an answer. To be perfectly candid, I believe the union bosses believed that aggressive male sailors and traders would see a young brown woman and ignore or trample me. They believed I would quit. But as it turned out, as it often turns out, they quite underestimated me. I secured a position based on my fulfillment of contracts, but I was frequently passed over for promotions. The sailors regarded me with respect because I frequently requested the opportunity to assist in their duties. You see, my superiors considered sailing below them. They were cargo after a fashion. But I always believed in being prepared for the worst. It only seemed the proper choice to learn how one sails. This endeared me to the men I traveled with, as they knew I was not above them, but saw them as wise souls I might learn from. The unexpected bonus of this arrangement was that my trips on behalf of the Grand Maritime Union always made better time than others. My superiors begged me for my secrets, but when I told them, they scoffed at my uncouth carriage. It didn't matter to me. I recognized that image was important, but not more important than survival. I simply told myself that when they all died as castaways, I would be the one left to run the company. Respecting sailors was a small price. This respect, however, did not extend to pirates, dirty men with no regard for law or order. I simply didn't understand how to speak to them. "Hey there, sweetheart. We need a cook on our ship." In my role for the Grand Maritime Union, I had the power to buy and sell these men 100 times over, but they simply did not care, so I registered my opposition to their treatment. "Take your hand back or lose it, pirate scum." And they did the same. I'm sorry. It is possible that I took some of that frustration out in my work. Can I help you? I'm afraid you haven't a choice. After all, when I entered a rival trading post, I was frequently viewed with scorn and derision. When I made clear my business there and that they would be joining the Grand Maritime Union and paying us most of their profits, they often reacted with anger. "And how you reckon you're gonna make me if your boss never find your body?" Large men are ever so petulant when they experience a challenge, especially from a small brown woman they believe to be below them. But I have always had a way of explaining things to people, of allowing them to see things more clearly. I will see you buried and burn down the orphanage your children are sent to. Some of my peers at the GMU would have told you that it was simpler to put an independent merchant out of business than to convince him to join the union. That's a basic misunderstanding. When you explain to a person the way in which the Grand Maritime Union has the power to dismantle his customer base, cut his supply lines, and shutter his shop with him still in it, well, now, sorry, could you explain this a bit again? It's actually quite simple. We'll do the calculations for you. You simply have to remind him of the things he loves and takes for granted, that they will be denied him when he is alone and cold in the streets. Then he becomes a more receptive listener. By the time I left, not only would they have signed onto our terms, they would tearfully thank me. "Thank you, Molly. I owe you everything." There. It was due only to my mercy and diligence that they would not have to find out how much their beautiful wives actually cared for them when their pockets were empty. I do not know if any of my crew suspected what happened behind my closed doors, but none of them told my superiors. A rousing success again, Molly. How do you do it? Honestly, your lordship, I simply explain to the merchants what they stand to lose. It's not a complicated matter. Ho! There are others in your position that would argue that point. In fact, they have wasted a lot of breath, stood where you are, belovitating about just that. Lord Havish. Belovitating is an evocative word to describe another council member's cousin, don't you think, Winston? If I had thought so, I wouldn't have said it. This cousin of yours had been outdone by a woman of significant lesser breeding, perhaps. Perhaps she deserves a promotion. Perhaps we ought to make her a junior trader on that special mission you're preparing. Hold on a moment. Now, Havish, we don't know what the risks may... What say you, Molly? Do you wish to prove yourself? I would value nothing more, your lordship. I grew very quickly to wish that I had learned more about the promotion before I agreed to it. I was a junior trader, but as they were expanding into a new territory, it put me under 2 senior traders who thought very little of me. Perhaps it was lucky, though, that they insisted on remaining isolated from the crew, so I was the one from whom the crew received commands. I studied the maps with which we had been provided extensively. The notes advised us to tread a little needle that was little larger than a single one of our ships. Of course, as any large expansion, the Grand Maritime Union had sent a bevy of ships. I saw immediately that getting all of these ships through what the notes called the Devil Shroud was going to be a tricky matter. I brought my concerns to my superiors as I had been instructed to. However, the idea of a fleet of ships sailing single file leaving the flanks of our own vessel unguarded was met with scorn. They declared that no one had ever been hurt by fog and that we would sail as instructed. I knew the moment that I saw the Devil Shroud that they were wrong and our ships were doomed. I tried to call it off. I tried to regroup, however we were too close and moving too quickly. The clearance in the Devil Shroud was too slight for even our lead ship. Our deck was too wide and our sails too tall. I took control of the wheel while crewmen shot to action, trying to pull down the shredding sails before we lost them altogether. As for the ships that our leaders had instructed to sail through the fog, I still hear the screams of those men as the Devil Shroud tore them and their ships apart. I don't always sleep so soundly. Even as we sailed, it was a struggle to keep the ship together. I ran from deck to deck, attempting to keep us above the water. If it hadn't been for that thoroughly competent crew, my body would have been devoured by the shroud just like the others. But we made it. We cleared the Devil Shroud and arrived in the Sea of Thieves, a place about which we still knew nearly nothing, including when it came to the pirates that roamed those seas. We had no idea what we could expect from them, and while I'm not fond of pirates, I recognized our invaluable position in that moment. I knew we would need to be cautious. Unfortunately, this was one mission for the GMU of which I was not in command. As fate would have it, it was also my last. You pirates clearly have no concept of whom you are speaking to. If you lay so much as one of your dirty hooks on our cargo, you'll find yourselves being hunted by the Grand Maritime Union. I am not sure whether that pirate intended to attack us before that moment, but my superiors certainly made that decision easier for him. That is the moment that my superiors became conscious of the fact that we were the only vessel that had survived their disastrous plan, and that things on the Sea of Thieves did not follow the same rules as the wider world from which we had come. All I could do was watch as a gang of swashbucklers raided our ship, outflanking our crew at every pass. As a young girl, I had never been allowed to study sword fighting, and unlike sailing, it was not something you could learn on the job. And I suppose that was where I got my first inkling that things could be a little different on the Sea of Thieves for me as well. I watched 3 young women that could have been my cousins from the look of them, take down Union men twice their own size. By the time their captain made it to the ship, there was no fight left in the crew. Then he did something I would never have expected. This ship and its toady-toady traders are going down to the depths. Any hard-working sailor who would join our crew is welcome on my ship. You'll be treated as an equal and receive a portion of any profit we make. Perhaps it should not have been such a surprise to me how quickly they joined the pirates. After all, my superiors had treated them like bilge rats, something which some are calling themselves of their own accord now. Perhaps the most surprising thing looking back now is that I didn't ask to join them. I believe they would have let me. As it was, I accepted my position aboard our only surviving rowboat with the head traders, and naturally they made me do all the rowing. We watched from a small island as they stole everything that wasn't bolted in place. It was only by my quick thinking that we salvaged food in a flint box that had been lost overboard. Then they scuttled the ship and we watched it work its way into the depths. I had never fully conceived of how quickly an entire ship can be swallowed by the ocean, how quickly we could lose everything. It was not lost on me that every ship the Grand Maritime Union had sent with us was now little more than driftwood only hours before. It had been a mighty fleet. But there was nothing to be done about it in the inky black of that first night, so I decided to rest and approach these new problems with a fresh mind in the morning. When I woke, I was in for quite a surprise. In the night, my superiors had taken our only boat and left. They had taken all of the food stores and the tinderbox. They had left me with nothing. It was fortunate that among the things I had observed while sailing was fishing. It took me hours to get the bait and the line right, but eventually I caught one. It looked less than appetizing, but I was frankly past the point of caring. And I knew from experience that if the light was right, I could start a fire with my glass. But I also knew this wasn't sustainable. I would have to find an escape from this island or die. Which was why, for the first time in my life, I'm glad to see pirates. The two women were kind in ways I did not know pirates to be kind. They shared their food and ale with me as I explained the situation. Why didn't you just swim out to the merfolk and have them take you to shore? Because merfolk aren't real, and you're just trying to have fun with me. I wasn't born yesterday. Come here. Does that look real to you? I'm going to need a lot more to drink. It should have happened sooner. This was when I truly realized that the rules were different on the Sea of Thieves. Katya, Ebony, and I were quick friends, a thing with which I did not have much experience. Hey, merchant girl, you think you can turn us starboard without sinking the ship? That depends on your repairs. This death trap barely stays afloat sailing straight. I wish to show them that I was a person who could benefit their future greatly. Glad to have you, girl, but the bad news is you're poor now. Huh? We barely make enough money to eat. The big crews have big guns and get the big prizes, dear. Whilst my new friends joyfully wasted the evening away in the tavern, my mind was spinning. To Molly! On the Sea of Thieves, there was no board of governors making a decision about who could and couldn't run things. It was simply a matter of finding an area at which you could excel and being willing to seize it. Or, at the least, having two friends that could help you seize it. Remember how I told you I was on a ship full of goods that were promised delivery to a location on the Sea of Thieves? Yeah, and I remember how you said they were stolen along with your crew. Say we got those goods back. Do you two think you could get us to the buyer? Because those are my old crewmates, and if they're here, then so is our stolen cargo. Finding the ship wasn't a problem. They weren't exactly hiding. After all, where was the law to come after them? How would the GMU reach them to make them pay? They had stolen everything that mattered in my life, but had nothing to fear for it. It's already loaded, just point and shoot, that's if we even need it. Here the GMU was nothing to them. Here I was nobody to them. But here I was also just as powerful as they were, and unlike them, I knew the value of what they had on their ship. On my mark. Ah! Have at you! What madness is this? You attack the... Keep the speeches. Ah! I'll have your guts for this, garters. A little help, Kadia? Good night, dolt. Thank you. These two won't be going anywhere. Is that what we need? Yes, it's all here. We stand to make a small fortune from this. There were too many to carry to our ship, so we made a plan. Try not to make any holes in them. Are you always this antsy during robberies? I don't know. I've never done a robbery before. This should be seaworthy enough to reach the ship. You lot better hurry. I'm too tasty to leave on the open ocean with all these sharks about. Now we get the ship and rendezvous with Ebony's raft by the time the pirates... Junior Trader Molly. Well, fortunate that you made it this far. We've actually just made a deal with the pirate captain to get our cargo back. You see, he had no idea what he... I'm afraid I've made other arrangements, and I can't have you alerting the pirates, so... Junior Trader, what are you doing? It's Chief Trader now, not that it will matter for you. It was easier than I thought it would be, severing my ties and finally taking what was mine. I think I understand pirates better now. I gotta admit, I didn't think the Grand Maritime Union had what it took to get supplies to us here. I almost left it there. I almost let him be thankful for the benevolence of my former employer. But I didn't. With respect, sir, they didn't. We're something new. Something better. You can call us the Merchant Alliance. And I hope we've earned your trust. If it means I never have to depend on the professionalism of a pirate or deal with those godforsaken gold hoarders again, you can count on me. It was the most money the girls had ever made on a single voyage. It was simple to convince them to reinvest. I understood perhaps better than the men in charge had what made the GMU work. People, even pirates, long for some amount of stability. And when the alternatives are working for money-worshipping madmen or grave-robbing witches, there was room for the Merchant Alliance to flourish. We used those first profits to establish our first trading post. At first, our jobs were few enough that Ebony and Katya ran them all with their own ships and crews while I ran the post. But soon enough we found ourselves in need of freelancers, so we brought on crews with captains we'd worked with before. Soon we had new trading posts, new traders, and we developed a system. If you wanted to work for us, you had to begin with small jobs and work your way up. In this way we developed relationships with the best crews and pirates. Of course, all success comes with enemies, or I suppose it's only apt to call the gold hoarders competitors, have become more and more territorial. Which they're right to do. If I ever got my hands on one of those keys, I'd put them out of business inside a month. Though frankly I'm far more worried about the Grand Maritime Union. Someday they will find this place again, and they have more money and more men to throw at the problem than the whole of the Sea of Thieves combined. I do wonder if they would work with me and allow the Merchant Alliance to operate independently under my command. But while I'm no longer so young, I am still brown and a woman, and I doubt the wider world changes quickly enough that that would not matter. But then again, you must know all of that quite well, yes? You've only been on the Sea of Thieves a short time. I've heard that your brother was the one in charge of the operation, but standing here face to face with you, I don't believe for a moment that that's true. Is it, Lisa Singh? No, ma'am. We're working together now. DeMarco is happy to be the face and voice of the group. He's quite a bit better looking and more personable, but I prefer being the brains, and when necessary, the sword. And you, young man, you said your uncle is nobility? Yes, ma'am. In Portugal and this one as a doctor, access to new medicines would definitely be a competitive advantage. I would be happy to provide you with all that I know, your ladyship. Ladyship? Well, that certainly isn't the correct address, but I'm certain you know that. You're attempting to flatter me, which I appreciate. Well, I would have to discuss this with the other senior traders before I give you an answer, but I believe my say-so will go a long way to convince them. You have given me a lot to think about, Lisa D. I must get back to work, but I hope to be seeing much more of you. Count on it. The coins from this contract is enough to cover a little business of our own. The end. Alright, so that was issue 2 of the Sea of Thieves Origin comics. Like I said before, if you missed the first one, you can go check that out on the playlist at the end of the video. And we should have more of these coming out in the future. If you did like this, you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe below. And let me know in the comments which story you like better and what you think of these comic books. I'm finding them pretty interesting. And it makes me like the Merchant Alliance a lot more than I used to. Maybe one day they'll let me set up my own little trading post in the game. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye y'all.